What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's your Earthmaster here on the live stream on this beautiful Saturday night, September 17th, 2022 date. It is about 7:16 p.m. California time here. And the latest quake shows a 1.8 earthquake up on the 3D globe. Right, where'd it go? Up here in Alaska, 1.6. Also some activity kicking up here. Further west of our movement that we've seen today, right around the Taiwan area, seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity. All right, let's go ahead and check out the latest info here from the USGS showing that activity across the board, across the flat scale model for the folks out there. Still seeing quite a bit of crunch, so to speak, here with the Philippine plate. That's going to be this little small, not a microplate, but it's in this outline here. You can kind of see it on the eastern side of the Philippines. That includes the Mariana Trench. And this whole section right here is the Philippine plate. A lot of activity here right around Taiwan, which is expected following the earthquake activity this morning, the 6.5, originally a 6.6. We have seen some further movement, recent movement here earlier this afternoon around the northern Mariana Islands, showing some activity. Increasing pressure here. Got to remember the western pressure in this area, putting this area around Taiwan under the gun, so to speak. I don't believe there's enough activity or enough built-up stress here around the Mariana Trench to relieve the activity here in Taiwan. So that's kind of why we're seeing continual activity there for right now. We did see some activity up north as well. This was from earlier this morning into the Izu Trench, 417 kilometers deep. Deeper activity definitely taking place here along the Philippine plate. Also a little bit of movement up here around the East China Sea, although both of these earthquakes here a little bit older from this morning time frame. But overall seismic activity here in this region pretty active. A look at Taiwan, there is the 6.5 in the blue circle, kicking off earlier this morning time frame. Pretty shallow earthquake there at about 10 kilometers. I'm not for sure if the USGS put out a statement on this earthquake or not, but doesn't look like it because it is in a major seismically hazard zone. Look at all those earthquakes since about 1900 or so. So it's no surprise to see a 6.5. This isn't like a, oh my gosh, a 6.5 in Taiwan. No, this happens a lot. There's a lot of stress built up here in this region. 6.5s are minimal compared to what can take place here in this area. Much larger quakes can kick up here, no doubt. So what else do we have out here aside from the Taiwan activity? Looking at the most recent movement, we did see a 4.2 in the India area, right around the Myanmar area, along this plate boundary here. Got a little horseshoe bend, kind of where the plates they bend. There's a lot of bending here within this region up against the Himalaya mountains. A lot of stress working its way towards the northeast fashion. Got to remember this whole plate system here kind of moving towards the northeast while you got pressure here from the northwest. And I show this quite often. Let's see if I can bring this back up again. I should have this downloaded onto my computer by now. And I'm sure I do somewhere. But a general look at plate tectonics, right? Just a general look. Kind of shows you the direction of the plates, the subduction zones here. There's a couple different, let me go over here to the images. That one doesn't quite show what I want far as the activity goes. Maybe this one here. Okay. So back over here, you got the India plate kind of moving like I was just showing you here towards the northeast. The Australian plate moving towards the northeast as well. You can see half of it here, half of it over here. So India plate is over here now, but you got to remember it's to the west here. All this activity kind of crunching and grinding in the most vulnerable spot you can ever think of. If you really think about it, you got a massive plate here, the Pacific plate heading to the northwest. Australia plate grinding up here against the Java Trench and the Indonesia area. The Philippine plate is headed northwest right into the Eurasia plate, which is headed to the southeast. That puts this area into a position that I don't think there's any other place like that here on Earth that sees this type of stress and built up here in this region. So a 6.5 is a very typical earthquake there around the Taiwan area, around the Philippine plate. This area is always squeezing and underneath the gun, so to speak. There's a couple different subduction zones on both sides of the Philippine plate, the Filipino plate here, as they mentioned, and it's just being crunched. Look at all this activity, folks. The Australia plate, the Pacific plate, the Eurasia plate, all just kind of eating up this Philippine plate here. So no surprise to see the activity there that kicks up in Taiwan, which is a pretty typical event. And that's exactly what it is. But it's a large earthquake, 6.5, no doubt, right? We can take a look here historically. The USGS has a pretty awesome catalog here. We can go 7.0 and above over the past, what do you want to go to? You guys want to go back to the year 1000? Why not? Draw a rectangle on the map. Pretty self-explanatory here on what needs to take place. So we'll build a little area here around Taiwan, just Taiwan right there, and we're going to use that region and do a little quick search here of 7.0 and above, since records have been kept here. You know, I'm sure there's been many other earthquakes out there historically that are not up here on the USGS map. It's just since about records have been kept. What do you guys see out there? Quite a bit of sevens, right? Our last 7-pointer in the this is over here around Japan area. Last 7.1 back in 2006. Around our area today, where the 6.5 struck, kind of about the southeastern edge of Taiwan, right? Got a 7.8, 7.3. It looks like the early 50s for that in that region, and 7.4 or a 7.0 back in 1938. So, been a while since we've seen a 7-pointer. 6.5, a lot smaller than the 7-pointer, but this map kind of shows you the magnitudes that can happen out here. It's very common to see a lot of earthquake activity here in this dynamic plate boundary. I mean, it's being eaten up and shoved around and pushed around. Of course, this is going to be a very active zone. And aftershocks, no doubt, continuing. Looks like largest aftershock so far is a 5.5. Again, there's always a potential to see something larger in this area, at least 48 hours from the somewhat main quake. You know, this could be an aftershock, it could, or a foreshock, so to speak. So always keep that in mind, considering all the activity kind of ramping up here, specifically around the Philippine plate. It's just one of those areas on Earth here, like no other place on Earth, that gets squeezed and crunched and just basically shoved around. You know, getting bullied around by these major plates. All right, backing out of here. Do we have any new activity kicking up here besides the India region? Down southeast of here, we had a 4.8 in the Papua New Guinea area. Some deeper movement kicking up here northwest of Solomon Islands at 217 kilometers deep. But aside from that, this older movement down here around the Horseshoe Bend, around Tonga, Vanuatu, all older activity, including over here around the Indonesia area. Let's see, when did that one kick up here? Java Trench. Yeah, that one was way before even the 6.5 kicking up. So again, let's look at some quiet zones. And I do talk a lot about those because right now the main area of focus is right around the Philippine plate. We're starting to fill in a little bit here around the Mariana Trench. The Izu Trench up north here, not so much, and the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. But right now, I think with all this activity kind of kicking up around this Philippine plate here, a couple areas to watch here over the last week that have not been hit by some seismic activity. Right around Manila, east of there, around the Philippine Sea. That's a subduction zone here, a major subduction zone. See some large earthquakes. So a couple of these quiet zones we definitely got to watch pretty closely here. for some possible movement here coming soon. The Big Island, southeastern edge of the or southeastern flank of the Big Island, showing some activity today. Mostly around Pahala, which is very typical here. It's an ongoing swarm since about 1960 or so. Check it out. Aside from that, no major unusual activity to note there on the Big Island up into the Alaska area. Typical day up there as well. No major unrest going on. No major swarms at any of the volcanoes currently listed by the USGS right now. One thing I can say is I've noticed, of course, across the Pacific Northwest is we've been seeing a lot of westward movement here, or at least right up almost against the Cascadia subduction zone here. Let's bring up the last 7 days of activity. Just got another 4.5 in the Taiwan area right now. Another aftershock on my phone. But here along the Cascadia, we've been noticing a lot of earthquake activity right up against the Cascadia megathrust zone. Now, not any big activity currently, but when it does, we'll know about it. But there's been these couple odd earthquakes here, kind of closer upstream from the tremor. Tremor kind of kicks down or kicks up, down dip, downstream here underneath Oregon, about 35-45 kilometers underneath this area. And in fact, all the way up the Pacific Northwest through Vancouver Island ranges and Northern California. That's the extent of the Cascadia subduction zone. But we've been noticing some earthquake activity much further upstream towards the locked area, and that's something to watch pretty closely. That's been going on here for over the last week. Today, definitely showing some activity as well near Rockaway Beach. That one kicking up earlier this afternoon, just a little 1.1, but overall seismic activity kind of on the increase here, about on the southern half of the Cascadia subduction zone. Northern California right now looks pretty quiet, doesn't it? That's that teeter-totter effect for you, working its way well westward with all the movement kicking up here along the Taiwan area. Got to remember here with that general plate movement right here, folks, right? Look at this, as we're kind of releasing pressure, so to speak. All this built-up pressure here along the Philippine plate is relieving stress out here along these areas, North American plate and the Pacific plate, which includes California, right? The Pacific Northwest. So I think it should stay that way for now until we see some stopping, so to speak, of this earthquake activity over around the Taiwan area. Looking at Southern California, though, we are seeing a little activity, just a little bit, some small, very small microquakes near the Pure Blossom, California area, a 1.5. That earthquake is right smack dab on the San Andreas Fault. So when I say that the pressure is relieving here around the eastern portion of the plate, that doesn't mean that it's magically healed and that things are not still under pressure, because we know that the West Coast is locked in certain areas, the San Andreas Fault for one, a couple other fault systems up here in the Bay Area and the Cascadia. So all that pressure just doesn't magically disappear. So when I say it's relieving pressure temporarily, it doesn't mean that all that pressure is gone, disappeared. So we're still seeing some activity out here along the North American side of the plate boundary, the San Andreas Fault. A little swarming activity kicking up here in the Cottonwood Basin, the Cottonwood Mountains. About 18 earthquakes or so within the last 24 hours. One of those, at least within the last hour or so. No major quake activity to report. In fact, the largest one looks to be a 1.8 in that little mix. But overall, remember, this area is locked down here, the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. It's been locked for over 300 years, and that's the section that will produce an 8.1 for the SoCal area. So there's definitely some pressure transfer, so to speak, coming into the North American plate. Looks like it's just right on this fault system here called the Smoke Tree Wash Fault. Smoke Tree Wash Fault. Okay, let's go ahead and look up that info here from the Caltech Data Center. And that is the, again, the Smoke Tree Wash Fault. I want to check this out and see what we got. Smoke Tree, are you listed? Doesn't look like that is listed up here. Again, these are some other very tiny, small fault systems. So I think these guys, maybe they just don't have it on there right now. I'm definitely not seeing it. So it's a very small fault system. It looks like only about 10 miles or so in the area. But that's kind of where it's occurring. And I'm pretty certain that there's a couple other fault systems out here besides what's shown up here on the map. Just not all listed. But either way, a little bit of swarming going on down there. Just on the opposite side here of the plate boundary. Right on the North American side of the San Andreas Fault area. What do we got inland? Not a whole lot going on throughout the Great Basin area. Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma. One earthquake up here around Lamont, Oklahoma area. I know what's up here. There's a lot of oil fields kicking up out here. A lot. Some of these are kind of well, they're kind of scattered up here. It looks like some of these squares are indeed some oil fields, oil operations, oil pumping operations near the Waukeeta Trend gas and oil field. Rich Valley oil field, Numa oil field, all surrounds this region. So at least one earthquake, a little 2.4 out there, kicking up today in that area. Backing out of here, the eastern part of the country, we did have one earthquake out here in New York. That was from late last night, a little 1.9. Nothing big and no further subsequent activity kicking up there in the region. Around the Caribbean plate here, that includes areas of Puerto Rico. Some spotty activity out there today, but no major swarms to take note of throughout the region there. Still looking at some activity into the Peru-Chile Trench. Somewhat deep, about 117, 120 kilometers or so for a couple of those earthquakes. Although things have kind of mellowed out there since about 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon. Things just kind of stuck over here up against the Philippine plate for now. A couple earthquakes out here in the Atlantic Ocean, or at least one of them out there in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, 4.9 coming in this afternoon time frame, and also some activity here around the Antarctica plate boundary with Africa. A couple earthquakes there along the divergent boundaries, separation of the seafloor out there. All right, Yellowstone National Park, just give a quick glance here. What do we got going on? A little bit of swarming kicking up here once again. And it looks as though it's around the Maple Creek area. This here is the last couple hours of seismic activity kicking up. And it looks like we're back into the swarming stage. We have been noticing a little bit of swarming activity here over the last 2 weeks. A little bit of on and off activity with some rapid earthquake activity at times. Meaning that we see a lot of these earthquakes happen in a short amount of time, talking about 20 or 30 earthquakes within a couple minutes or so. These are not large earthquakes by any means. And in fact, looking at the graph here, I would say that they're all below the 2.0 threshold. So these are mostly microquakes kicking up here around the area. And again, these look like looks like it's occurring right around the Maple Creek area for the epicenter of these quakes. Notice these smaller spikes here. Those are all earthquakes as well. Those are not showing up along these, some of them are not showing up across these distant stations here, mainly localized to this area right around Madison River, Maple Creek area. That should be the epicenter of those quakes. Once the USGS gets them on there, and it is a weekend, I get disappointed when they don't report quakes. It seems like they have the computer system set up for 2.5 and above when it comes to earthquake activity here, and it seems like they'll just get to them Monday morning, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. That's what they do. That's how their operations are enforced. Let's see what else we got. Tremor tonight along the Cascadia, since that was something we're kind of talking about. There's some of that activity along the Oregon coastline, some tremor activity down dip into the subduction zone of the Cascadia underneath the North American plate. We got 99 epicenters of tremor. Been kind of off and on here over the past couple weeks as well. no major tremor event. In fact, the last tremor event of size was back in early March there, when we had quite a few hundred, even 1,000 or so back there in the late March time frame. But we haven't seen nothing like that yet. Just for now, 99 epicenters of tremor along the area of the Cascadia subduction zone. All right, solarham.net website. Checking out the latest space weather for today. Got a couple solar flares kicking up here over the last 3 days. 4 of them up into the M flare category. Right now, current data suggests that we're kind of diminishing a little bit below the C flare threshold. A look at the culprits, so to speak, as far as the sunspot activity goes. I believe those 4 M flares were from 3098, which are now distant and way far away from the Earth as far as the facing side goes. Let's see, M7.9, 3098, right? The latest one, M2.6, right there, 3098. And of course, we'll check this other one, 3098. So all those sunspots were directed away from Earth. No major CMEs headed this direction. We do have a coronal hole that could enhance our solar wind stream or geomagnetic unrest here over the next few nights. We'll check that out. Right now, we're not really into position, but we will be here in the coming hours and days as that kind of rotates into the Earth view. As far as sunspot potential goes, only a 75% chance of a C flare, M flare at 20% chance, X flare around 5%. The 3102, which is our 3088 X sunspot, not looking super dynamic, and all these other sunspots here are just kind of just hanging out. So there's not a whole lot of threat. And I've said that this morning in the update, far as the Earth side sunspots go. 3098 or 3098, which is way over here. Can't even see it. Not this one, but way beyond the visible disk here of the sun. Still might pop off a C flare or another M flare, but not Earth directed whatsoever. And we got to look at been kind of keeping track of these solar weather events in relation to volcanic activity, earthquake activity. And by the way, what do we got coming in here? 2.9 near the Mid Pines, California area, 27 kilometers deep into the Sierra Nevada. It looks like. Latest quake there on the globe. So I've been kind of looking at the relation between solar weather and we got here in Japan as well. Kind of kicking up there pretty deep, or not deep, super deep, but it is deep into the Japan Tranship. 46 kilometers, 4.8. So low activity here as we speak. But the solar weather relation to the earthquake activity, I find it more so not in relation. Yes, we've had some M flares from the sun. But we've had X flares in the past with no subsequent activity kicking up here as far as the large earthquake activity goes. It's just I'm kind of 50-50 up in the air right now when it comes to whether I believe sunspot activity and solar weather events play a part here on far as the tectonics here on Earth. I know the magnetosphere gets under a lot of pressure when it comes to blocking out these particles, these charged particles from the sun, and more so when we have like a coronal hole event or a massive CME Earth directed. But man, I've seen these CMEs hit us strong with G2, G3 class storms and very minimal earthquake activity. So I look at the raw data and kind of put 2 and 2 together and think, hey, does this really relate to each other, or is this just coincidence? There's still a lot more studies to check out far as the relation between the solar weather uptick or lack of and the plate dynamics here. I still think it does play a part to an extent. How much? I haven't come to that conclusion yet, but we're working on it, right? It's all part of the process in understanding how the dynamics of the interaction of solar events and the plate tectonics here on Earth work together. I do know it can affect weather. Weather seems to be affected quite nicely when it comes to the sunspot uptick and lack of the sunspots. All right, let's see what else we got. Anything else we need to cover here today, folks? The EMSC model here. We're going to double check this here real quick, see if we're missing out any data that USGS may not be reporting. I'm not seeing anything spectacular. They're reporting the 4.8. USGS is reporting that 4.8 as well up here, just off the coast of Tokyo. And we just had these two earthquakes pop off here within a short amount of time of each other. 4.8 in Japan, and the little subsequent movement here at the California area with the 2.9. So it looks like things are starting to shuffle around a little bit. Definitely areas to watch are those quiet zones like I'm talking about there. Like I've mentioned in the update video this morning and right now. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench just has not really moved all that much. But if you look at this, most of the areas here are centered around our pressure zones where the plates kind of subduct and meet each other. Yes, up here around the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, we do have a subduction zone, but it's not as head on as these two areas are, with the Pacific Plate, the Eurasia Plate, the Australian Plate, just crunching everything up here in the middle. And that's kind of what we've seen here in this area. But eventually, this will catch up. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench has been awfully quiet as far as any large-scale activity goes. In California, too. If you really think about it, a little four-pointer here and there along a major plate boundary, just not... it's just not enough. I mean, I think there's a lot more out there that's going to happen soon. Question is when. What do we got here in Southern Cal? A little bit more activity here around the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. So just lighten up a little bit. All right, folks, we're going to jump off here. Have a good night. Enjoy your Saturday night. Kind of barbecuing out here, enjoying some chicken and some tri-tip with Missy Mimi's, who is outside of the computer room for now. But we're going to kick back and maybe watch a movie or so and just enjoy the rest of our Saturday night. And we'll chat you guys sometime tomorrow. Peace out and enjoy your evening, folks. Take care.